Howdy folks, Haussmann here. Just real quick, I got an old video here from a different channel. It's summertime. I am really busy with work and home life and just stuff, so I'm taking a minor break, but putting out these old videos on a Throwback Thursday kind of thing. Working hard on regular videos, so I'm just trying to get some of them worked up. But I'll be back. Anyway, the editing is going to be a little different. Everything's kind of slightly different, and yes, I am aware I look like the Big Show. Anyway, learn about the Guardians of the Galaxy. Go for it. Bye.
The Guardians of the Galaxy. Like, do you know who they are? And you're like, Hoss, man, dude, we know who the Guardians of the Galaxy are. And it's like, but do you know who they are, though? And where they came from? There might be some surprises. There definitely will be space clowns. Space clowns. So to start off with, the Guardians of the Galaxy that you're thinking of right now, they're not really the Guardians of the Galaxy that I think of. When I think Guardians of the Galaxy, this is what I'm picturing right here. That's like Charlie 27 and Martinex and Yondu. These guys debuted back in 1969 and were kind of off and on all the way. That's where the name came from. They're from an alternate dimension in the future. It's weird. Maybe one day I'll talk about it, but we're going to talk about the more well-known Guardians of the Galaxy, the ones with the video game coming out, then the movies. Groot. I'm going to talk about Groot. Let's talk about Groot, baby. Let's talk about you and me. Gonna sing a song about a guy who is a giant tree. Let's talk about Groot. I wasn't gonna keep that in, but I made it rhyme. Why would I have done that? So I'm pretty sure a lot of people already kind of know this about Groot. Like, you know what I'm about to say. 1960, Tales to Astonish number 13. Maybe you didn't know that, but that's what I'm saying. So Groot first showed up in Tales to Astonish number 13 from 1960, written by Stan Lee with art by Jack Kirby. This is before the Fantastic Four, before a lot of the superhero stuff. They were doing like monsters and scary stories, and then here was Groot, the monarch of Planet X, and he was just this giant tree man running around on Earth and like absorbing wood into him, and I assume maybe growing bigger and stronger from it. And then the humans take him down and they kill him with some super termites, enhanced termites. And Groot is dead.
Oh my god, they killed Groot!
That was Groot's first appearance. There is some debate whether this was the Groot that we all know and love today. I actually kind of think it was, and I'll get to that in a minute. The next time he showed up was 16 years later in 1976 in Incredible Hulk Annual number 5. And here, like, Hulk was kind of fighting all these monsters from this time, and then kind of in the middle of that shows up Groot, and Groot's like, I am the monarch from Planet X. I'm at the Hulk. And Hulk's like, you're made of wood, man. And Hulk grabs a couple of rocks and just smashes Groot to bits until Groot is a stump, and Groot, again, is dead.
Oh my god, they've killed Groot!
2 appearances, 2 deaths for old Groot, the monarch of Planet X. Maybe they're electing new monarchs every time. I don't know. But 21 years later, in Sensational Spider-Man -1, it was a flashback. And this was just a dream sequence. It was in Peter Parker's dream when he was a little boy. He had this dream that him and his Uncle Ben were out fishing, and like monsters started attacking them. And one of those monsters was Groot, the monarch of Planet X. And before Groot really does too much, he's punched through the face by another monster, and he again is dead.
Oh my god, they've killed Groot! You bastard!
3 appearances in 37 years, and he dies in all 3 of them. And I kind of feel like writers are just like pulling from their vast knowledge and trying to like impress their friends who are other writers. Be like, oh yeah, you got Chitlock the chicken cow? Well, check this out. I got Groot, Tales to Astonish 13, baby. Then about 9 years later, there was a little mini-series called Nick Fury's Howling Commandos. And it wasn't the Howling Commandos you're thinking of. It wasn't Dum Dum Dugan and all the guys from the war. It was like monsters. It was, you know, Nick Fury's Howling Commandos, and that's what they should have called it. And maybe that's what they thought they were calling it. You can't hear a title until you say it out loud like an idiot on YouTube. And it was written by Keith Giffen, and basically the idea was like there were these monsters, and they brought monsters in working for S.H.I.E.L.D. to track down other monsters, and eventually they come across Groot, the monarch of Planet X. And this Groot is starting to look a lot more like the Groot we're familiar with. And that series went for 6 issues and then ended. And then after that, a year later, in Annihilation Conquest Star-Lord is meeting all these people that he's getting together to be the Guardians of the Galaxy, the ones you're thinking of. And that does include Groot, the monarch of Planet X. That series, I will point out, was also written by Keith Giffen. So that makes me think that that is the same Groot. And the fact that every single appearance of Groot is the monarch of Planet X kind of makes me believe that they're all one Groot. Like I said, there's debate about it for some reason. I don't think there needs to be much debate, but I welcome being wrong. Hasn't happened yet. And that's the other thing about Groot in these early appearances. Groot in his appearances over the past 40 years. His early modern appearances, Groot was actually quite eloquent. Well, eloquent for a tree. He said a lot more than just, I am Groot. He actually spoke in complete sentences and could talk, so that changed along the lines. Like many things about many of these Guardians. That said, like, Groot is truly a remarkable character because, like, can you name another one-off character from the 60s that got a major resurgence over 40 years later and then was a big player in one of the largest box office movies of all time? I can't think of another one. If you can, let me know in the comments below. Now I'm gonna jump to Gamora. Gamora debuted in 1975 in Strange Tales number 180, written and she was created by Jim Starlin. Strange Tales at the time was an Adam Warlock book, and Gamora showed up. But first and foremost, what the heck is this thing on the cover? Calm down, 1970s Marvel. And you know what? That's not even the weirdest thing. That's not even the weirdest thing in this issue. Anyway, Gamora shows up and she's like, I'm gonna kill Adam Warlock. And right off the bat, like, that's pretty much, she's introduced as the deadliest woman in the galaxy. But like, look at this thing. Look at this thing. What is this thing? What is this thing? What is going on? I don't know how to react to that. But Gamora debuts. She is an assassin that works for Thanos, and she is pretty much there. While Gamora is trying to figure out where Adam Warlock is, like, Adam Warlock has been captured by these other people, and Adam Warlock is put in this mind prison thing that's literally over his head, and inside his own mind, he is fighting off space clowns. And I read that, and I looked at the pictures, and I said, these are space clowns. And I thought to myself, I said, I was not expecting space clowns. And I thought back, there's something my buddy Jakey Biscuits always says, and it's always expect space clowns. And now I finally understand what he means. You know, from there she transferred over to, well, the book actually kind of shifted and became a Warlock book, and she ran with that. And a lot of times from then on out, when Adam Warlock showed up, Gamora was with her, and Pip the Troll as well. And Gamora kind of stayed like that. The deadliest woman in the galaxy, maintained a lot of character. More was built, obviously, throughout the years. And Gamora, being a major player in all things cosmic, was right there for Annihilation, and front and center in Annihilation Conquest, where she would eventually join the Guardians of the Galaxy. She pretty much remained consistent throughout, as much as one character can over 30 years. So you know we gotta talk about Rocket Raccoon. Rocket Raccoon visually stayed the most the same of all the Guardians, because he is an anthropomorphic raccoon. He debuted in Marvel Spotlight number 7. Now Marvel Spotlight was more of a magazine-style comic, and it was black and white, and it kind of just did different things. Like Blade, I think, was introduced in it, I'm not sure. Star-Lord was definitely introduced in it, well, we'll get to that. He was created by Bill Mantlo and Keith Giffen, there's that name again, in this weird side story that was called The Sword and the Star, and Rocket was helping this guy who had a weird name get through this planet, and it was basically like, I'm a raccoon with a gun, and it was honestly kind of weird. There's not a lot to it. His name is only Rocky in that. We later learned that Rocky is short for Rocket Raccoon, so it's all good. But nearly 6 years later, in 1982, in Incredible Hulk number 271, Hulk is just in space. Like, I didn't read the issue before it, so maybe there was a reason, but it was the 70s, he didn't always need a reason. And the Hulk is just in space. And Rocket Raccoon is there, and so is his buddy Walrus, who is a walrus, and they're fighting stuff. And there's a lot of anthropomorphic animals. One of them is an anthropomorphic rabbit named Blackjack O'Hare, and I had to look it up, and that actually, Bucky O'Hare predates that, so I'm not sure what's going on there, but there's these anthropomorphic animals, and they're fighting, and then, like, out of nowhere, they're fighting space clowns. Space clowns, oh space clowns, come to fight Rocky Raccoon. More singing than I was expecting in this episode. Why would I have done that? But there's just space clowns. Here's the Hulk and Rocket Raccoon fighting space clowns. I was not prepared for space clowns once. I was certainly not counting on space clowns twice. Different writers, like 10 years apart, space clown. And that led into Rocket Raccoon's very own 4-issue miniseries, which featured a lot more of these anthropomorphic animals on Half-World and more space clowns, and just, it's something else. It is something else. And after that, Rocket Raccoon just kind of showed up in a quick panel in Quasar. There was a little brief story in She-Hulk in space. It was weird, she knew who Rocket Raccoon was, and that's kind of weird. Basically, in his first 30 years of existence, Rocket Raccoon appeared in 10 issues, 4 of those being his own miniseries. So that's got to be some kind of record. And then aside from one more brief appearance in Exiles, he only appeared again in 2007 in Annihilation Conquest Star-Lord, where Star-Lord's putting the Guardians together. But next up, we got to talk about Drax, and I don't have a song for this one, that's fine. Drax was a human being named Arthur Douglas, and he died in a car accident, and his daughter, His daughter's Moondragon. She was taking. It's weird. And this guy, Kronos, took Drax's living soul and put it into this other body that he built, and it's not really a robot. I kind of used to think he was a robot. Maybe he was at some point. So his soul is in this body that has been designed with the sole purpose of killing Thanos. He's green, and he's from space. And he shows up in Iron Man 55 for the first time and helps Iron Man fight off the Blood Brothers. And that's really all there is to it. There's nothing else really of note about Iron Man 55, except that it's the first appearance of Thanos, which means, by default, if it's the first appearance of Thanos, then Drax was created by Jim Starlin. Drax kind of became a main player in Cosmic Marvel. If Thanos was there, Drax was there, because Drax had to kill him. And, like, Drax was there for a lot of the big events. I believe he was there for Infinity Wars. I'm pretty sure he was there for Infinity Gauntlet. Like, Drax, if it was Cosmic, Drax was there. And over time, he kind of became bigger and bulkier and kind of dumber, and became basically Space Hulk. He stayed big screen Space Hulk till 2005 when he got his own miniseries written by Keith Giffen. And in that, Drax was on this prison ship that crash landed on Earth, and a bunch of stuff happened. Drax ended up getting killed, but then out of his body burst forth this newer, sleeker version of Drax the Destroyer, the one we're slightly more familiar with today. And he was on a mission to kill Thanos, so nothing really much changed about Drax's character, except for he looks like a badass now. Drax went on through Annihilation, and then during Annihilation Conquest, he eventually teamed up with the Guardians of the Galaxy. As I mentioned earlier, Star-Lord did first appear in the Marvel Preview magazine. He was in issue 4, sort of. Well, that's where Star-Lord first appeared. He was created by Steve Englehart, and it was kind of this story about this guy who, well, you know the story of Star-Lord. He had an extraterrestrial father and a terrestrial mother, and then went from there, and he flew off and became this space adventurer flying around, and he got the elemental gun and whatnot. And Chris Claremont wrote a few more of those issues of Marvel Previews and kind of solidified the character, and then some more stuff happened. That's irregardless. But that stuff all kind of happened outside of the Marvel Universe. That was a different Peter Quill. The Peter Quill we know and love, more or less, from Guardians of the Galaxy, debuted in Thanos #8, written by Keith Giffen. And this one shows up, and he is kind of like the old grizzled war veteran. Like, he's got cybernetic stuff in his eye. He's got cybernetics kind of all over him. He's this space guy, and he doesn't really care about Earth. He never talks about going back there. He does allude to the fact that he had a past as Star-Lord, but he's like, Star-Lord dead, I'm just Peter Quill. And like, he's this grizzled war vet, and he helps Thanos out with some stuff. And he goes on, and he's like Nova's right-hand man, like a head-up general in Annihilation. And then he's there for Annihilation Conquest, and the whole thing with that is like robots. So basically he has to get rid of all his cybernetics, and he forms the Guardians of the Galaxy. So yeah, like, he's not quite the, you know, the cocky Star-Lord we know from the movies. Like, he would evolve into that character later, but like when he first kind of made his grand re-debut in the Marvel Universe, he was this grizzled war vet. I don't know how else to say it, so I've said grizzled war vet for the 5th time just now, maybe 4th. Grizzled war vet. There we go. But yeah, he's like this older, gruffer character, not the charming young leading man, all sassy, all Chris Pratt-y. When he initially forms the Guardians of the Galaxy, Gamora and Drax aren't there, but Mantis, Bug, Captain Universe, and Deathcry are there, with Rocket and Groot, and Star-Lord, or Peter Quill. They did get their own ongoing stories written by Dan Abnett and Andy Lanning. They had the 5 characters we know: Star-Lord, Rocket Raccoon, Groot, Drax, Gamora, but they also had Phyla-Vell, Quasar, and Adam Warlock with. And that series would go on. It was actually a really fun series, and it kind of paved the way. Like, obviously it became very popular, and that is why we were able to get the Guardians of the Galaxy movie that we did get. But then once that movie came and was the big hit that it was, a lot of the character traits from the movie were rolled back in and kind of reconstituted the characters. Star-Lord most noticeably. He became a very different character. He got the face. He had a face shield, but it was a different face shield. Anyway, just thought maybe before you play Square Enix's Guardians of the Galaxy game, you might want to know who the Guardians are and where the heck did they came from and what is up with the space clowns. Anyway, please, if you enjoy this, like it, comment on it, subscribe on it, and come back next time for more comic book shenanigans with old Hossy Pants.